I'm Dr. Erica Bove, and welcome to the Love and Science podcast. I'm your host, and also the founder of Love and Science, Thriving Through Infertility. I'm so excited you're here today. With over a decade of experience helping thousands of women just like you, I empower professional women to build their families with confidence and compassion. Let's dive in. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Love and Science podcast. I am so honored to have an amazing guest tonight. It is tonight when we are recording. Her name is Dr. Kathy Stepien. This is somebody I've wanted to connect with one-on-one for a very long time. Her work is just incredible. So let me tell you a little bit about her before we get started. So she is a board-certified pediatrician, a master certified coach, and the director of the Institute for Physician Wellness. She founded the Institute for Physician Wellness with the mission of helping physicians learn, heal, grow, and connect. It's absolutely amazing. She does coaching, she does retreats. And, to think about the mission behind what she does, her work is driven by a deep commitment to helping physicians, especially women in medicine, live empowered and fulfilling lives on their own terms. She believes in fostering a life where women can fully stand in their power and embrace their role as the authors of their own stories. Welcome, Dr. Kathy. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yay. And she's in Alaska, right? I was just learning. So just like me, still practices clinical medicine. Her pediatrics practice serves underserved populations and also has this wonderful, wonderful coaching practice too. And so I think the combination of the two will really provide some insight in tools, real tools that we can use to help us get unstuck and navigate this fertility journey to get to the other side. So with that, I'd love to know, your story in terms of, you were, pediatrician, working and something within you called for you to do something beyond with physician wellness. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey for you?
Oh, I'm happy to share. It feels like the dark ages. This was at a time, it was in 2016, a time when we weren't really talking about physician well-being like we do now. I think back then, many of us struggled in silence, and we might reach out to residency friends or our sister at 2 a.m. or whatever it is. But so much of what physicians carry, we often were doing so in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt a need to bring physicians together. I know I was struggling and felt that there's a need for us to gather, for us to connect. And I knew if I was struggling, I was not the only one. And it wasn't just about my struggle, actually. I had been leading retreats even before I went into medicine. And through medical school and through my whole training and growth as a human being, I just found that connecting with other people, bringing people together is kind of a core to who I am. That I've always been a gatherer of people. And I, at some point, after residency and surviving all of that, got to a stage where I was really ready to do that, to bring physicians together. So in 2016, I just decided. And again, people weren't talking about it like we do now. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And so I just put together some retreats and put out the word that I'm doing this. And the rest is just history. It's been incredible. They have, we started out just with a small retreat of maybe 10 or 15, and things have just exploded over the years. So it's really been a joy, an incredible time of learning and growth. And IPW has grown from starting out just leading retreats to offering a whole wide variety of programs over the years, of different training programs. We've done consulting for organizations on well-being, just the whole gamut. And along the way, I also learned about coaching and got coached myself. And I thought, wow, this is something also that I'd like to be able to bring to support physicians in their well-being. So it's just been a wonderful 10 years, about 10 years, and so much growth and learning. And I get to meet incredible physicians around the country, even internationally. It's just been an incredible joy. I can tell you, I didn't start out thinking I would be doing this. I was going into medicine to practice medicine. And so It's a surprise to find myself this many years down the road, and it's a wonderful fit. I love clinical medicine, and I also love this balance in connecting with and supporting women physicians.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. It's interesting. So it sounds like you actually did this work before you were a coach. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Long before I was a coach,
Yeah.
I've been doing physician well-being, and I taught a lot about mindful self-compassion. I also teach mindfulness. I've gone through mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindful self-compassion teacher training, things like that, and have been practicing mindfulness for a long time. And in the retreats, one of the things I brought to the retreats to share with other physicians is a sense of self-compassion. I think
Hmm.
so many of us are so hard on ourselves and push ourselves in ways that can be that we would never push a loved one. We would never say things to our friends and family but we say them to ourselves. And so when I learned about self-compassion, I thought, wow, I want to share that with other women physicians. And so I was focusing much of my work earlier on around that, as well as of a wide variety of topics that impact our well-being. But all of that happened well before I studied coaching.
So amazing. I'm so grateful for that. And you hear stories, a lot of people become coaches and then they do this thing, but it's like, it sounds like your journey was very organic in terms of you recognize your own struggles and your, real calling to create community. And then you acted on it. And then you were like, oh, there's this thing called coaching. And I think that would integrate in. So it just sounds very beautiful. And I think, mindful self-compassion, we do a lot of it in, love and science. I think it's wonderful because I think it's like a muscle. Like the more you build it, the more it grows. And then the more it becomes like your sort of automatic, you fall out of a yoga pose and you gently laugh at yourself instead of chastising yourself or something. Like it just becomes part of like the reactions. And then we can congratulate each other, oh, that was a great mindful self-compassion thing to do. Today I found an email, like this crazy email that I can't believe I missed like 6 weeks later. And I just said, okay, mindful self-compassion. I didn't see it. There's nothing I can do now. Thank you so much for your patience. I don't know how I missed this, but here we are today on, this day in July answering this email. Right. So I think it just helps us feel better daily. And I'm so glad that you're able to provide that tool to the women physicians that you work with for sure. Um,
Thank you.
yeah.
It's been a life-changing um, skill for me to develop and an understanding for me to develop. Earlier in my life, I was in my 40s. I don't know how this happened. How do you hit 40 and not know that self-compassion is an option, right? Like I learned in all my experiences in life before then about compassion for others. I'd studied empathy and did research on it while in medical school. Like I thought I understood compassion, but I never had heard about the whole concept of self-compassion. And I'll never
Mhm.
forget when I heard Kristen Neff speaking about it, who's one of the leading researchers across the country. And I remember that feeling where my brain was just shifting and this explosion in my brain, like, what? That's a thing? I I had this mistaken belief that I needed to be really hard on myself, and it was because I was hard on myself that I accomplished such things, right?
Right.
That I somehow made this cause and effect connection, which is totally like, the opposite of what the research shows. But so to have this complete mental shift in my 40s, I'm like, what? This is amazing. I began to tune into that critical voice that I just realized I was offering myself all the time. And it took a lot to be able to begin to shift that. I often thought, okay, I kind of got the ideas in the beginning and started practicing that and reading about it and listening to things and all of that. But it has actually taken years to integrate it and to the point where it's like, oh, this is my new normal.
It's so fascinating. We are so fascinating.
We are. It's so interesting how like just a mistaken belief can create such suffering, and a change in that belief can change my perspective on so many things.
That's right. And like you said, it's a practice. Like we practice it daily.
Yeah.
And if we notice, we're like, oh, I noticed some self-judgment, or I noticed that maybe there was that critical voice a little bit more loudly, then we can get curious about it and then sort of rework that, like, okay, well, maybe the next time this comes up, I could try X, Y, or Z. And that's sort of how we forge those new pathways. But I'm obsessed with Kristen Neff. We talk about her a lot at Love and Science. I actually have been doing her mindful self-compassion workbook, which goes along with her book, but it's so interesting. And I recommend it to a lot of my clients, most of my clients actually. And I've been working on it for 3 years. I mean, that's interesting because it's such a slow, intentional process. And like to bust through it, to do it like, netter style or whatever we learned in medical school, like it's not that. It's like, okay, let's really let this seep in and integrate in and apply it. So I'm amazed. And also, do you follow Tara Brach at all? Do you listen to
I
her?
do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love her energy. I love so much of what she has to add as well. I think she's fantastic.
You know who else has done some fabulous work in mindful self-compassion is Christopher Germer.
Oh,
And I spent a week on retreat with the two of them, and then later went back and did another week of teacher training with them. And he also has a book on it. I think it's called the Path to Mindful Self-Compassion or something like that. Germer, Germer, highly recommended. I enjoy
right.
it. I think, they're both just fabulous books. They're both fabulous human beings, but the books they put out there is just wonderful. So I'd encourage you and your listeners to check that out as well.
Absolutely.
Just some really fabulous work being done by by good people, and the research around it is just profound. And it's just been so life-changing for me. So
Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's going to help a lot of people, and me too. I've not heard of this author. I can't wait to learn more. Right. Um, so I wanted to ask you about how you look at this notion of overfunctioning, right, with your women physician clients, because I think we have gotten so efficient and so productive. Like I think of myself, my chief year of residency, like running a labor and delivery floor and looking at the strips and I was at a very acute center, and just all the things that my brain, and then we extend that, right, fellowship and new attendinghood and all the different ways that life presents complexities. And so, you know, how do we even recognize if we're overfunctioning and have sort of like loving compassion for that part of ourselves? And then how do we start to shift to be able to let some of that go? Like what does that look like?
great question. I think overfunctioning, I don't know that we would see it with our eyes as much as feel it with our heart. Like that feeling of doing too much for everyone all the time, carrying the weight of the world, carrying the weight of everyone around us all the time, kind of being that person that everyone counts on, and taking on more than what is ours to carry. So, and you know that feeling. I think sometimes we can express it around the holidays, for example, with an eye roll of, oh, I've got so much to do, or at the hospital or the clinic where there's this feeling of just one more. Of course, there's one more thing to add to the physician's list, right? Like it's just always people always wanting more, or getting a direction of from administration. It's like this also has to be done, and it's like so there's like piling it on, and there's this felt sense with that it might be hard to actually describe it, but it is one that is I feel is there's tension, there's activation, there's physiologic activation around it. It's not a happy place. It's a heavy burden to be walking around with. I suspect if we were monitoring, our blood pressures would go up and our heart rate would go up. There's this heavy burden feeling to it. And when we can tap into that, it's like, oh, well, what is this about? Well, maybe some of this is actually not mine to carry. Maybe some of this is what I'm doing because this is what's been expected or what I've been socialized to take on. But is it really mine to do? And do I even want to be doing it? Does it serve me? Is it in alignment with what I'm here to do in this lifetime? So I think that when we feel that heaviness, when we can tap into that activation, that triggering, even sometimes it'll come out maybe as some frustration, of or some of the women I work with have shared with me this feeling of, well, they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't want that. They shouldn't need that. They shouldn't act that way. They shouldn't say that, right? So when we get into that should, the drama around other people's behavior and expectations, like, well, wait a minute. That's really pushing up against our boundaries. It can be a boundary violation, and it be an indicator of, well, wait a minute. I'm showing up in a way that's not in full integrity, that is over functioning. And here's an opportunity for me to look at that, to get curious about it, and have self-compassion about it, and
Yeah.
decide with full clarity of, okay, how do I want to show up? How do I want to move forward?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of really good wisdom there. And I think you're right when you say that like to understand what it is, it's a felt sense rather than a cognitive sense, because I think if we analyze it from our brains, all we're going to see is accomplishment and like, like our cheer, like that internal family systems, that cheerleader part of ourselves, like, oh, great, another paper published. Oh, great, another committee. Oh, great. You got all your mandatories done on time. Like, whatever it is that we pride ourselves about. Oh, even today, I mean, it's ridiculous, the dopamine. Oh, Press Ganey surveys came out. Oh, great. I'm on the good side of the numbers this time. But like maybe 2 months ago there was a negative, like it's the whole thing is so interesting to think about. And so I think when we can feel it with our hearts to kind of understand, okay, what's left for me, like am I giving it all away and am I carrying the weight of the world myself, and what do I need, because so many of us are recovering codependents. We have been so fixated on the needs of everybody else but ourselves, maybe because we were displacing the attention on ourselves for various reasons, right? And so when we then shine that light back on ourselves and say, okay, what do I actually need? What support? Maybe I need a secretary to help me with filling out some paperwork. Maybe I need, an extension on something, like, but we need to ask ourselves that question. But it's only when we can recognize that discomfort in ourselves as something that maybe could shift, that I think we can start to just even, I don't want to say get a handle on it, because it's not exactly that, but just have the awareness to then tune in to our bodies, tune into our intuition to start to shift, right? Would you say that's sort of,
I think you're spot on with that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
one of the things that I learned from Christopher Germer that I just love is I put my hand on my heart before I get out of bed in the morning, because I don't know if you're like this, but I tend to, the minute I wake up, my brain is on go mode.
yes.
And, I start with that list of all of the things. And so before I even get out of bed in the morning, before my feet hit the floor, I try to pause enough. I put my hand on my heart and I pause and ask, what do you need? What do you need, dear one? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember learning that from Christopher Germer, and it just was so moving. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I ask everyone what they need. No one ever asks me what I need, and I never ask me what I need. So I started that a few years ago, of this morning habit of doing that, and it's shocking. Sometimes well, today I just really need to get more protein in my diet or something, or sometimes like, well, today I need to have that hard conversation I've been avoiding. Or today I need to set a boundary that I've been working to set, right? Or today I need to reach out and ask for some help on this, or take something off my plate. So sometimes it can be a really simple answer, and sometimes it's a more detailed answer of something I've been avoiding. But that practice has been life-changing for me as well. When we overfunction, when our whole lives are very externally focused in serving our patients and our loved ones, it's so easy to not even consider what our own needs are, and then just keep going and just keep over functioning. And we're so rewarded for doing that, right? We do that, and that helps us get into medical school and helps us get into residency and everything. I mean, just we are
Yeah.
rewarded in a million different ways
The
for.
esteem of our families, and oh, she's the one we can count on when there's a crisis and all these things. And it's like, oh gosh, it's a lot to hold up. I sometimes, there's like that atlas and axis, and you see like the image of holding up the world. There was a point as a new attending when I actually just had this moment and I saw myself. I'm like, I cannot hold up the world myself anymore. And I think you're so right to think in terms of communities, because when we can express these things together, when we can mirror our own experience, when we can decrease the burdens from each other, really, when we can spread it out and diffuse it, I think that's really where our power is. It's not in going it alone. I mean, yes, we can learn these individual tools. We absolutely can. And those are incredibly useful. But I think the reinforcement of those tools, the kind of network of roots, so to speak, I think that can really, the power really takes off when it's in community. Yeah.
It does. And I think it is through community that we change the culture of medicine,
Hmm.
which is really where we are at. We are a movement in medicine, changing the culture of medicine,
That's right.
saying, this is not okay. This is not humane. It's not good for patients. It's not good for physicians. Like
Right.
something needs to be done differently. And we are part of that. We're that culture of change that's happening so that the physicians who come next after us are adopting an entirely different medical system, a different culture of medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so powerful. It's so, so powerful. So, I'm thinking of my listeners who are mostly female physicians who are balancing often a full-time load of patients and infertility appointments, sometimes not at their own clinic. And so, when I think about overfunctioning, and this is not to call out anybody in particular, but I'm imagining that many people listening to this right now are like, oh my gosh, like my to-do list is insane. And I get up at 5 a.m. and I drive to the fertility clinic and then I do rounds. I like, or whatever it is, like what can you say about somebody who already is high functioning, maybe, and then has this like giant life thing happen, needing a commitment like the infertility journey on top of it? How do you approach somebody like that in terms of saying, okay, well, you know, what has to give to make this sustainable? Because the infertility journey is not usually weeks, or it's not even usually months. I mean, it's usually something that spans, unfortunately, years of people's lives to build their families. And so it's the marathon and not the sprint. And I just feel like my people are the ones who have it all piled on to try
Um,
to make it all work.
I think that um, a journey with infertility can feel so isolating and so lonely.
Mhm.
And connecting with other women physicians who also have some story around that as well, can be so affirming.
Mhm.
And connecting with non-physicians, who are in similar paths, and then connecting with women physicians who might not be struggling with fertility, but also know what it's like to be a woman in medicine juggling it all.
Mhm.
So there's different spaces for that, but I think the key to it is the connection, is the honesty of this is what it's like to be me. This is what it's
Mhm.
like to be this incredible, smart, compassionate human being that's here helping other people and feeling vulnerable, having to live with uncertainty,
Mhm.
uh, having challenges that we can't solve by doing what we've done in the past, which is work harder.
Mhm.
So in the past, I think when, for most of us, when there's been challenges, like, well, you grit it out, right? You somehow just work harder and achieve, you're just going to accomplish. And I think when we're on a journey that includes infertility, that strategy, that gritting it out is not helpful. And so to recognize that we're just a human being having a human experience, and that includes joy as well as sorrow, and that we are not the only one, and to be able to connect really human to human
Mhm.
with others in that sense of community, and then also connecting with ourselves, allowing ourselves to be merely human, not these like super women who are over functioning and have no room for our fundamental needs. But to
Mhm.
really stand in ownership of our need for everything that we as a human being having this human experience need.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And I think what you said, connecting with others, connecting with ourselves, I think about, myself as like now I'm like mid-career, right? But I think of myself as a new attending. And I remember just the comparative suffering, like, oh, how many days have you been without a shower? Oh, this dry shampoo is really holding up. And I do treasure my friendships during those years. And I think that that was a particular phase of life. Although when I think back to some of those conversations, I'm like, is that really a badge of honor? Not showering, how long can you go without, blow drying your hair? I don't even know, but it's almost like a culture of comparison and comparative suffering. And then when we start to shift it culturally, then it's like, oh, good for you, you set a boundary. Oh, good for you, you did XYZ. I 1 in 3 female surgeons has infertility. It's 1 in 4 female physicians, 1 in 3 female surgeons. And so one of our clients recently said, I'm on call the 24 hours after my embryo transfer, and I'm going to find a way to do a call shift. People don't ask about this. It's a man's world, but I need to know I did everything I could to, allow this embryo to stick. And I said, that's fantastic. And then about 3 weeks later, another client, another surgeon said, and guess what I did? Because we share wins of the week, right? At our support groups. She said, I got coverage for the 24 hours after my call shift because so and so did it, and it's like, we can actually, it's like contagious when we're like, oh, she can do that. Maybe I can do that too. And that's how we shift the culture, right? So if we change from this comparative suffering to comparative self-compassion, it's like comparative self-compassion. It's not comparison, but it's like encouraging self-compassion, encouraging choices that affirm our humanity. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be surrounded by people who share those ideals and make it happen. I mean, that's the beauty of coaching, is you make these things happen. Yeah.
The way you said that about affirming our humanity, I love that. And I think that in community, we can do that. There can be, there can be guilt around that, or shame or judgment of that. Well, if you really cared, blah, 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 right? Fill in the blank. Because remember, we're walking into an institution that does not put that as a top priority. And yet we know, and I've said this a million times, everyone wins when physicians are well. Right? Everyone wins. The physicians, of course, win, but our patients win. All of humanity, our communities that we're serving win when we are our best self. So the fact that we have had up for negotiation, whether we sleep or not, whether we have washed our hair or not, or anything else, like the fact that that has been negotiable in the past is not okay. And to make it non-negotiable, like, look, this is what I need to be able to be the physician that you need. Period. No explanation, no shame, no judgment, no guilt. And I think that that in community is where we really can create those new cultural norms and continue to improve and change medicine really for the better. I think as more and more women have entered into medicine, women have contorted themselves to fit into medicine. And I truly believe that medicine needs to change to fit all people of all genders, and we're better for it. The outcomes are going to be better. The patients are going to get better care. And we, of course, are going to be better. So it's no small thing what we're doing. And to be able to support one another as we're doing that, it's a beautiful thing, actually, to be able to contribute in this way and recognize that as we are declaring things for ourselves and each other, we really are helping medicine. We're not being selfish. We're not being cold toward our patients. Of course, we love our patients. We wouldn't be here if we didn't, right? We're just asking that we're not miserable when we're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. Even I think about today, right? I was seeing patients in the office and doing procedures. And, I had a moment where I just laughed for a long time with a patient and her husband because it was just so funny. But I don't think I could have had that lighthearted moment if I was exhausted or bitter or resentful. Like, I wouldn't have been coming from that open energy to allow that humanity. And I think that's where the healing happens. I mean, you know, it seems that female physicians with infertility are not getting pregnant at the same rates as people, non physicians. And it is so interesting because I don't think it's just deferred childbearing. Like, we need to really study this, but I think a lot of it is those quote unquote negative emotions, the shame, the guilt, the self-doubt, the stress, the cortisol, all those things. And so I think we're even talking about changing the physiology so that we can allow this creative process to happen. but it doesn't happen unless there's this collective buy-in, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the work that came out recently, that women physicians die younger than male
I did
physicians?
see that. I did see
And
that.
and then also to women who are not in medicine. And what a heartbreaking situation. Like, I know that we care and we're here contributing in such incredible ways. And to recognize the chronic stress, that the impact, it's probably chronic stress is one of the contributors,
Yeah.
that may impact our own well-being in a million different ways. It's really, no, it was such an
Yeah.
interesting piece when that came out.
Yeah, I think it gives me pause to think about, okay, well, how am I living my life and how can we create communities of people? And this is about sustainability too. It's not just about like getting through the day or the week or the month, but it's about having meaningful careers for as long as we want them, right?
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I tell my clients, if they're in this season of life that's extra busy with fertility appointments or things like that, maybe go down. And it's hard because, again, there's not coverage. People are paying for these very expensive treatments out of pocket. So finances are sometimes it's a stretch. But, if somebody, say, is an ER doctor and they can go down a per diem with just a fewer shifts per month, that gives them more autonomy and flexibility. Say I have people who our ER doctors, there's actually been, I said about ER, but there's more movement to like reduce overnight call actually, for people who don't want that, because it's been shown that that's a stress, even on pregnancy as well, and pregnancy outcomes. And so I think, we're making slow gains. I think it's just like, I want to hear more about what you say in your work about giving ourselves permission to rest. We don't need to earn the rest. We can take the rest. So maybe this is not the most productive academic season of our lives if we don't want it to be, right? If we want it to be, then fine, then we put our energy there. But something does have to come off to have this. It just can't be like this plate that's like a buffet, that mountain upon mountain upon mountain upon. That's not any sort of quality life. Like, something has to come off temporarily to be able to make it all work. And I think just acknowledging that we are not just these machines that keep piling things on, but we have to really be intentional about our time, our energy, our attention, and then ultimately the sustainability. And so many people say, oh, I really regret not, doing another IVF cycle because I was so worried about these work deadlines or whatever else. I'll tell people, if you had an appendicitis, it would have been a non-negotiable. So just pretend you have an appendicitis and you're going to be out for 2 weeks, and then it's just done. But I think this notion of how can we start to give ourselves permission to permission not to overfunction, permission to function well and not have that burden that's not sustainable.
Yeah. And I think everyone's going to answer that in their own way. We are all carrying different things. I think you were right to consider that perhaps something needs to move down in the priority list, and not recognizing that it's, or not saying that it's forever, but for this season, for right now, these other things are of greater priority to me, and this is where I'm going to put my time and my talents and my treasures, and that there's room for different seasons of our lives, that if something that moves down on our priority list is really a priority, it will come back up to the top of the list when life allows for it. But to get very clear on what really matters to us. I talk a lot about core values and values alignment, and looking at our priorities and our interests, and they're going to change across the lifespan. They're supposed to change.
Mhm.
And so looking at that and recognizing, okay, if this is of greatest priority, there's no weakness in saying that's less priority right now. There's no like fault or weakness by any means. I think it's really empowering actually to be able to stand in our truth and say, how wonderful, I'm going to put my time and my focus here, even if that means I'm not focusing as much over there. That's fine. I'll get to that someday.
Yeah. Right. Trusting ourselves that if it's important, that
Yes.
that it will happen when it's meant to happen. Those other
That
things.
trusting ourselves is it's it's a very big piece of it, isn't it? Especially when we're dealing with something like infertility, where there can be this worry about what's wrong? What should I be doing? What could I be doing? This questioning. And to be able to trust ourselves in all of that and be with ourselves, walking through that with ourselves. Always, I think about walking ourselves home. We're walking beside each other through it, literally in community, but also as ourselves, walking with ourselves through all of this, through the roller coaster of it all.
Yeah, it's so true. Like so many questions, so many doubts, so many fears and anxieties. And I think, one thing I like to tell my clients is, okay, well, let's look at the data, right? And so far, so good, right? So far in the cycle, everything has gone the way that it should. And so sometimes we just need to take those little steps and remind ourselves what is actually going well, and then just keep moving forward. And then when we get to the next milestone, if it's not optimal, then we pivot, we figure it out. But I think so often we disregard what's actually going well because of the fears of what might happen in the future. And so just that's where the mindfulness comes in, as well as to stay in the moment, stay in the present moment. Connecting with the breath, I think, is so powerful, and being in the present moment, because in this moment all is well, right? It really is.
Yeah, in this moment, everything is okay. In
Yeah,
this very moment, and I think that's just such an important piece because our brains have evolved to future travel and past travel, and so to bring us back to this moment and recognize, oh, in this moment, this is what is here right now.
that's right.
And it can be hard because we're really good at future, like worrying about the future and replaying, like, going through everything in the past. So to come back to this moment is, it's also a skill, right? It's also something that it's part of the challenge of being human, is being able to do that for ourselves, the gift of coming back to this present moment as well.
That's right. And I think about, coming back to overfunctioning, I think, a lot of the overfunctioning is like these stationary bikes where we're not even getting anywhere, right? Like it's like these rumination loops, these worries, these fears. And sometimes if I look at, like, I do a time audit or an energy audit, I think, okay, where am I spending a lot of my thoughts? And are those thoughts serving me? Are they, productive? And so sometimes getting a handle on the overfunctioning is really shining light on the thoughts and the feelings, and just having that awareness. And if I want to worry about my taxes over and over and over again, okay, fine, then I'm choosing to spend my energy that way. But if I'm like, wait, no, I have my appointment with my accountant, like, we're going to go through it, like, I know my checklist, it's going to be, then I only allot the amount of energy to that actually is needed, like the bare minimum to get through that thing. Because I think so many of us compulsive perfectionistic people, a lot of that burden comes from the overthinking and the over analyzing and the over energy. And so if we can strip that down and remind ourselves, oh, wait a second, I am making, sound medical choices. I've got my A team. This is a very thoughtful treatment plan, because it's like, we all commit to this treatment plan. And then it's like, but what if this, but what if that? I heard on social media that there's this thing. And all of that, I think, contributes to that burden of why it feels so heavy. And
Wow.
so stripping it bare and saying, okay, well, what are the essential parts that I need to spend my energy on? How can I get rid of that which is not serving me? We have to recognize it first, but then consciously let it go, which is not easy, but it's a skill. And then say, okay, well, maybe this burden isn't as heavy as I thought it was. It's that emotional weight that I was carrying with it, and all that extra energy I was spending, all that resistance, maybe even, like we talked about that at the beginning, what am I avoiding, that I think can contribute to that frenzy of overfunctioning, because it's so clouded at that point.
It's so interesting that we are not logical creatures. I think we want ourselves to be like all the time. But we really are just human beings, and that includes all of this mental chatter that is so unnecessary at times and so not helpful at times. And so to be able to say to our brains, okay, brain, thank you, not helpful. Thanks for trying to keep me safe, but not really what I need right now. Um, we've adapted these patterns for reasons, and at sometimes in our lives they may serve us. And we know I'm sure you and your audience know about the negativity bias, and that we're always scanning for a threat to our security and safety. And so of course the brain is going to be offering us, anxious thoughts at random times. But then also coming out of that mental chatter and settling into the body and allowing the reassurance of the body to send messages to our amygdala that we really are okay in this moment. Like in this moment, we're okay. That, we're breathing, we're doing what we're needing to do. Our fundamental needs are met, and to be able to like actually feel that. I think so many of us, myself included, we kind of run around in our head separated from our bodies. And I know in residency in particular, it's like just ignoring sleep and cues for needing to use the bathroom or hunger or whatever it was, just kind of ignoring those body senses. And so um, we get really good at that, I think, in medicine. And so be able to not only turn toward our thoughts, but also turn toward our body, our feelings, and our body sensations to create a home, a safe place for ourselves in the spite in the setting of uncertainty, in the setting of all of life's challenges, or all of life's stuff, good and bad. And to create this home, this place that we want to be, is can be profoundly helpful for all of us as we're moving through this wild ride we're on.
It is so, so profound, my friend. Thank you for sharing that. I think, this notion of home, right? We are walking each other home. We are finding a safe home in our bodies, in our minds, in community. Like I think there's nothing more powerful, and the feelings, they're all there for a reason, so we can thank them, we can honor them, we can process them, we can feel what we feel in this moment. And I think that's a lot of the power of what we do, is really getting those tools to be able to do those things in the moment, because it's a learnable skill, just like, doing an egg retrieval is a learnable skill, like whatever, things you do in your practice, like it's a learnable skill. It does require confronting that emotional side that we so often ignore during our training. But I think the fertility journey brings all this stuff front and center. And so I say, okay, well, this is just the access point. This is what the universe is giving you right now. And so that's where we're gonna dive in. And then somebody's like, oh, in my marriage. Yeah, your marriage too. you know
Yeah.
but I think it's just such a wonderful thing. So I want to make sure that I ask you about your book, which you are writing. And I think, something about grit in the title. Did you say that there's a so if you could please share a little bit about the concept of the book and why you chose to write about grit, and sort of just any wisdom that you want to share from your writings. I think it could really benefit our people for sure.
I um I think I have an excessive amount of grit that has not served me well.
Yeah, same.
And I think I'm not the only one. If you look, I don't know if you had this, but when I was in grade school and middle school, we had this thing in gym class where you could earn the Presidential Physical Fitness Award. And you had to do like a certain number of push-ups and climb a rope and whatever. One of them was the bent arm hang. You had to hang on to like a monkey bar where your
Gosh.
chin is above and you couldn't let go. And I would love to do a study if I could go back and look. It's like, okay, the people, the women who were able, the young girls who were able to hold that and were not going to let go, even though their arms were on fire and they were shaking and they were just not going to give up, that level of grit. Like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, those are the ones who went on to go into medicine. And
Those are the successful ones.
those are the ones who worked 30-hour shifts or went for however long, but without just ignoring
Right.
the
So
muscle on
interesting.
fire or whatever it might be. But I have seen in my life that I've had an excessive amount of grit, and I thought that has been wonderful. It's reinforced in our culture that grit is a wonderful thing, and I think that is true to a point. I think for most people, grit is a wonderful thing. I also think that there's a portion of us who are lean toward excessive grit that really doesn't serve us. So the
Mhm.
title of the book is Done with Grit. The working title is Done with Grit, Unwalking Ourselves Home. And it really is based on this idea that, yes, grit can be helpful, can serve us, but at some point, excessive grit is harmful.
Mm-hmm.
And we are socialized and rewarded for the excessive grit that's connected with overfunctioning. And here's an opportunity to turn toward that and set that down and recognize that we've been carrying things that are not ours to carry. And as we do that, it really opens us up to showing up and living in a different way that is so much more joyful and authentic,
Mm-hmm.
and fun. So that's what I'm writing on. The book is out for submission, and I'm hoping will be published in 2026. So your readers can look for it someday.
I can't
For your
wait. And the
listeners.
other word that came to my mind as you were saying that is free.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
just shackled by all these expectations and, responsibility for other people's relationships. And just I think it'd be really fun to write a list of like all the things that are not mine to carry
Yes.
and just be like, and then just do some visualization of like letting them go, because you're right. We are so overly responsible, and so a lot of that is not ours to carry. It's just not.
And
Yeah.
it makes sense of how we got here. Of course. Of course, we've adopted this and we've carried this. But there also becomes an opportunity to look at that. You're right about feeling free. It's very liberating. It's there's a grief associated to it when we realize like, wow, I did all of that, and why? But I think there's also so much joy. There's so much joy and liberation and freedom and sovereignty that is about really showing up authentically in this beautiful life that we have and living in a way that is so meaningful and honors how precious it is that to be able to be intentional and to be able to say no and say yes clearly without all of the mental chatter and drama around that, because we're standing in such ease in alignment with this authentic self.
Yeah, it's so true. I absolutely cannot wait to read your book. I say this a lot. I say everything in moderation, right? So, you know, sure, grit in moderation, but most of us don't have grit in moderation. We
No, we
need,
probably wouldn't be here. Like
uh,
it has served us well, but
yeah.
to what end?
Right, right, right. And then it's like, well, then what can come in? Like maybe some self-compassion. We let go of the grit, and then maybe the self-compassion can rush in, and the love and the freedom and the joy and all those things. So I absolutely cannot wait to read it. I think it's going to be such a treasure for the world, really, and especially female physicians who live by these tenets. And that's one of my missions is for, to free myself and then to free the other people, so that we can live our most authentic lives, because that's freedom. Freedom to me is, yes, autonomy and all those things, but it's really living in alignment with values, like you said, and living as authentically as possible. And the fact that that can be done in the context of an uncertain fertility journey, that can be done in the context of a harsh medical culture. Like we can do these things at the same time. And we just got to be clear. We got to learn how to speak up we got to figure out what we need. Like you said, you ask yourself that the first thing in the morning, figure out what we need, and then how we can use our voice to ask for those things. Right. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the concept of uncertainty, and I think that being able to navigate life within uncertainty is it's part of our shared humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was in when I was in residency, I was in a bicycle accident and I had a concussion
Mm.
and a bunch of injuries that took me out for 9 months.
Wow.
And I had no idea if I was going to, my concussion was severe enough that I really lost a lot of my cognitive faculties. I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't read. I felt like my brain was on fire, like any sound or smell or just too much stimulation. I literally could not process. And it was day after day and month after month of living with this, like literally in the uncertainty of I don't know if I will ever get my cognitive faculties back. There's no guarantee in any of this. And just having to be in this place of uncertainty, it was one of the most difficult experiences of my life to know that there was nothing I could do, that my brain was either going to recover or it was not going to.
Mm,
And there was nothing I could do to make it better. There were a lot of things I could do to make it worse. Um, but just to be present in that nothing but uncertainty and to dwell in that place. And it was absolutely one of the hardest times of my life and one of the lessons for me that has impacted so much of my work as a physician and recognizing that many of our patients and many of each other of ourselves, each other, that is part of our shared humanity, that we often walk in uncertainty,
mm,
as do our patients. And there's no promises. There's things we can do and we do what we can, but there's no guarantee in life that of anything.
mm-mm.
And it's a hard place to be, but it is part of our shared humanity.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That must have been so hard. And, just walking day by day. And it's like that surrender that we talk about. How can we surrender? And if something's truly out of our control, that's also not ours to carry. Right. So
Yeah,
just
right. And I
hoping.
hate the
Yeah.
idea of surrendering. It's like, I don't want to surrender. It's
I
like, I
know.
just want to work hard and like fix things and do this and right. Like
I
I can
know.
do that. The letting go part, the surrendering part, I'm like, are you kidding? No. And I'll be mad about it and kick and
Well,
scream about
yeah, that's it. And like you said before, it just that sort of grit, work harder, it just doesn't work for the fertility journey. In some ways, it's actually counterproductive. And so it's like, how can we find that sweet spot of hoping for the best and letting go at the same time? And I think that's one thing I love to help my patients and my clients with, because I think it's one of the hardest things, but it is sitting in that discomfort of the uncertainty and saying like it's going to be okay. Like no matter what, I will have a meaningful life as a parent, not as a parent. I will find my pathway to parenthood if that is what my heart's deepest desire is. It might not happen with my strong plan A, but it might happen a different way, that maybe that little soul that's meant to be mine is going to come in. I don't know. I'm not the creator of the universe. I am a guide, and I help my people find their values and their voice. But a lot of it, like you said, is the uncertainty. And I will also say that the uncertainty is a lot more tolerable when we come and share that together. It
and we
really
come
is.
together. Absolutely. And this is where, when I talk about connecting with each other and then connecting with ourselves, I absolutely believe that that uncertainty in some ways almost becomes bearable
Yes.
when we connect with each other and connect with ourselves. It's not, we're not just like alone in the tundra. It's like, okay, yes, there's uncertainty here and a whole range of other emotions, but we're not alone in it. And in many ways, that makes almost everything more bearable in life. And there's beauty and lessons in that for sure.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We could talk for hours. This is so inspiring. Um, I want to be mindful of time. Is there anything else you feel that our listeners should hear about, know about, pay attention to? Anything else that's on your mind that sprung out of our conversation?
Well, boy, we've talked about a whole range of topics. I I think that it's important for all of us to know that we really are not alone in this path that we're on. And it can feel so lonely, and we can have a whole bunch of stories around how broken we are
That's right.
and how things should be a certain way. And to recognize that even those stories and even our experiences, we're not the only one.
That's
And
right.
I see that time and time again in the women I coach with and the retreats that I lead, that there's this like shock and realization of, wow, I thought it was just me. And to recognize that we really are together in all of this.
Mhm.
Even in those times that feel pretty lonely, that we really are together much, much more than our brains might tell us.
That's
And
great.
to lean into that.
Oh my gosh. So, so beautiful. That times a million percent. I've never conceptualized a million percent, but in that way, it rings true, because we are stronger together. We are never alone. I'm going to meditate on that tonight. Well, Dr. Kathy, thank you so much for coming to the podcast and sharing. I know my listeners are going to want to know where they can find you, where they can go on retreat with you, all those things. And we'll put this in the show notes, but just tell us, where can people find you?
The easiest way to find me is on my website, the Institute for Physician Wellness. So if you just search that or search my name, Kathy Stepien, MD, you'll find me. And there's all different things you can look at on the website about how to connect. And then, of course, I'm on all the typical social media stuff as well, Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. But go to the website.
Amazing. And we'll make sure all the people can easily find you. Thank you again for sharing. This has been such an inspiring conversation and lots of food for thought, my friend. Until the next time.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Love and Science podcast. I'm so glad you joined us today. If you found this conversation valuable, if you could please rate, review, and share this podcast with your trusted people, it would mean so much to me. If you want more tools to help you navigate the fertility journey, please book a discovery call with me today. The link is in the show notes. Please do not let infertility have the final word. I'm here to take the burden from you so that you can achieve your goal of building your family. In gratitude, this is Dr. Erica Bove. I'm rooting for you always.